Tommy was cool, come to life. Little Bear's hyper aware, but he's not freaking out. He's just like, I'm an Indian in the cupboard and I'm out in the bedroom.
Yeah, Little Bear's really rolling with the punches here.
He don't care.
Because we'll see here in the next scene that another Native American figure does not roll with the punches as well. Omri, he's going for 2 Indians in the cupboard, which, you're getting greedy after one.
Not everyone's cool coming out the cupboard.
No.
And this is an older gentleman, and he has a heart attack and dies.
Just right on the spot. Just seizes up, down. I know you'll probably want to table this for later, but so if he sends that chieftain back, like if you die in the cupboard, do you die in real life?
That's what. So remember that stupid movie that came out? It was like a video game. It was like when you die in the game,
that's exactly why
you die
I said
for
the
real.
phrase. Yeah, if you die in the cupboard, do you die in real life? It's like,
I think you do.
So this is just like the chieftain's just gonna have an aneurysm back in his time, just like drop dead. I want a sequel to this, and I want it to be a horror film, and I want it to be from the point of view of all of the people who get their body snatched, the mental anguish they go through, gaining knowledge that they shouldn't have.
Directed by Jordan Peele.
Great Spirit.
Yes, Little Bear.
Are we always a great people?
You are always a great people, but it's not always so good.
Things change for us.
They will.
How is Little Bear ever going to sleep again with this knowledge?
The best part about family movies for kids is that there's always a dark side. Hola, Benny Noodle, what's poppin', corn dogs? We are back. It's been a couple weeks, but we are here to serve. I am one of your hosts. I am Jimmy Crackcorn. I am Mr. Pop, Captain Crunch, Maestro of the Microwave. I'm James.
Maestro of the Microwave. Is that one new?
I said Master of the Microwave a couple weeks ago, and then last week when we were talking about our Oscar nominees, Maestro was one of the movies nominated, so that sparked something in me. I was like, oh yeah, Maestro.
I like it. I don't have as cool of an intro as you, but I am Nick, and I'm here doing my thing.
No, you're way more than that. You are the goddamn corn dog himself, the corn dog roller, the hot dog roller steamer man.
At best, I'm the corn dog that's been sitting on the 7-Eleven rollers for one too many hours.
His time is now, ladies and gentlemen. It's Nick Justice. And hey, speaking of the Oscars, we got to go over the winners. Let's see how we did with our results.
Let's do it.
Nick, our first category we made guesses on was Best Actor. I, of course, went with Paul Giamatti, my boy, Marty Wolf. You picked Cillian Murphy, or as we kept incorrectly saying last time, Cillian Murphy. I think that's the first time I heard his name being pronounced in real life.
I use phonics, so I'm going to keep calling him that.
Well, I use ebonics, and Cillian Murphy was the best actor of 2023-2024 for Oppenheimer. So you got that one correct, buddy.
Yes, I did.
Sorry, Cillian. We kept calling you Cillian, but now that you won an Oscar, you deserve your real name from us.
Finally.
Champ.
There you go. You've earned it.
You damn Irishman.
Moving on to the best actress. Or as James loves saying, best female actor.
Just best actor. Best actor.
Best actress.
The other best actor
is...
with a vagina.
Well, now you're being transgressive.
Was that microaggression?
I
don't know what that means.
I know. So, James, you picked Carey Mulligan from Maestro.
I was going Shot in the Dark.
I picked Emma Stone from Poor Things. And hit the jackpot there because Emma Stone won.
I'm blown away. Nick is 2 for 2 here.
Boom.
Okay, animated feature film. I took a guess at just a movie that the only movie of the list I've seen, and just being a Spider-Man stan, I picked Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and I said outwardly it's not going to win, but I wanted it to. Nick, on the other hand, said Nimona, aka Pneumonia, and we were both wrong because it went to The Boy and the Heron. Never seen it, but congratulations.
Congrats. You might have earned it. Moving on to Best Original Score. James, you went with Killers of the Flower Moon.
Mm-hmm.
I, again, was quoted as saying, I'm just going to go ahead and stick with Oppenheimer for most of my picks. And I was correct. Original score goes to Oppenheimer.
And what's stupid is that I didn't know that Ludwig did the score for Oppenheimer. So how dare I bet against Ludwig Göransson, the guy who won an Oscar already for Black Panther, made the Mandalorian theme song. I'm an idiot.
That's a rookie move.
I'm 0 for, and you are 3-1 at this point.
Boom.
Okay, best original song. I jokingly said The Fire Inside from the Flamin' Hot movie. And Nick, you went with a very conservative choice of Wazaze, A Song for My People from Killers of the Flower Moon. I would have went with Wazaze too, went Flamin' Hot just to be funny. Didn't pan out for me. Didn't pan out for you either because it went to Billie Eilish's What Was I Made For from Barbie. And I literally said, What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish. I don't think that's going to win. God, I'm awful at this.
You got to go with that gut, man.
But that wasn't where my gut was. My gut was Wazaze, and I just said Flamin' Hot because it would be funny. But I was totally wrong. So, again, I'm 0 for, and you're 3 and 2.
I am. All right, moving on to visual effects. James, you chose Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Loved the pick.
I honestly thought Guardians was fully qualified to win that award.
We talked about that.
I'm upset.
I went ahead and said Napoleon.
Can I be honest, Nick? That was a weird choice. Going with Napoleon? Because it doesn't seem like a heavy CGI movie or visual effects movie. I mean, I guess if you count like cannons fucking blowing off like, as visual effects, but I was like, Guardians was way better than whatever Napoleon can do.
Well, I always wonder that about the visual effects. Does it mean like CGI, like the CGI effects,
So
or is it just like
CGI is a subsidiary of visual effects? But it's
but visual effects can be practical.
Crazy to, yeah, no, it totally can. But I just think
so I was
like,
thinking
it's so
the big epic battle scenes. I thought would get some whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
The Oscar actually goes to Godzilla -1, which we did talk about, and we mentioned how apparently cool it is. So I'm glad it got its due.
Unfortunately, the darling of the Oscars, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, could not pull it out for visual effects.
There's still hope for Part 2.
Next up, we got cinematography. Nick, once again, you were going hard for Oppenheimer, and I pivoted to Poor Things at the last second from Killers of the Flower Moon. Shocker, you were right. Oppenheimer was going for a quote-unquote sweep during this Oscars because it takes home cinematography as well. Are you kidding me? You're killing you haven't seen any of these movies yet. You're guessing so accurately. What does that say about the Academy?
I think we said it all last time, buddy.
They're predictable.
Moving on to costume design.
This one's funny.
Yeah.
This one's funny based on your argument of last time.
Yeah. So costume design, James, you said Barbie.
That was a great choice.
Yeah. I went ahead with Poor Things.
Because
the rest of the movies, you're not designing anything. You're just using what's available to you.
Well, you said like, hey, Oppenheimer, Killers, Napoleon, or whatever, whoever the hell was nominated, they're all just pulling documents from real life accounts and pictures. And it's like, you already knew what they were wearing. You're not designing a costume. And you said, for my own sanity, I just have to pick Poor Things. And that ended up being correct.
It did.
You're killing this.
Yay, me.
Okay. Second to last category, we have Best Director. This is when I finally bent the knee to Mr. Christopher Nolan. I said Christopher Nolan's taking home Best Director for Oppenheimer. Nick, you said the same thing. We were on the same page. We got this one correct.
Oppenheimer. Yeah, really coming in, like you said, sweeping the Oscars.
Never bet against Oppenheimer.
No. Except if you're me for our final category, which was Best Picture. James, you said Oppenheimer like a very smart individual. Me, the guy who went heavy Oppenheimer the whole time, tried to pull a sneaky on you and swung for the fences. And I'd felt so good about my previous picks. I was like, you know what? I just gotta, it was a heat check. It really was. It was a heat check of picks. And I went with the unconventional pick of Barbie, really thinking maybe the Academy, because Oppenheimer was going to get everything else, they had to give Barbie her flowers, right? Such iconic for women kind of thing. And I thought they'd cave, but they didn't. They gave Oppenheimer that clean sweep at the Oscars, man.
I gotta say, Nick, that was a bold choice. Who's that guy on the sports thing that says, I want Iguodala? Is that Max?
I think that was,
what's his
face?
Was
Max Kellerman.
Max, you pulled a Max Kellerman on
show.
the Best Picture pick because you're like, I'm picking Barbie. You know, like Oppenheimer was killing it.
I'll tell you what, if I was putting money on it, I would have stuck with Oppenheimer. It was just the best choice to take.
If a laser was pointing at planet Earth and aliens were going to blow it up, you'd pick Oppenheimer, not
I would have gone
Barbie
Oppenheimer.
Iguodala. Okay.
No.
Also, did you see Al Pacino present Best Picture?
I did.
Al Pacino walks out there, pulls out the envelope, and he just skips. He skips saying all the nominees. He just says 10 wonderful movies nominated tonight. And the winner, I gotta go the envelope for that one. A very super anticlimactic. I'm assuming exact opposite experience as watching Oppenheimer. If the bomb ever goes off, I'm assuming it does. But he just opens the envelope. He's like, M-I-C Oppenheimer.
And my eyes see Oppenheimer.
Dude, it was so weird.
And then there's like this, like, wait, was that the winner?
Yes.
Are we getting La La Land right
Yes,
now?
I'm a
I mean, granted, he's 83 years old, so I don't really expect a whole lot from Mr. Pacino, but could have used a better build up for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Don't invite him back, Academy.
Didn't he just have a kid?
I don't know. Did he?
Pretty sure he just had a kid, yeah. Or is having a kid very soon.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
You know what? I appreciated Mr. Pacino being an agent of chaos and just saying, fuck it. I'm going to walk out there and do my thing. And you can deal with it, Oscar Academy.
So final tally there, James. Final tally.
What's the score here?
I score a 6 out of 10.
Killed it. Above 500.
Buddy. Yeah. 2 out of 10.
Yikes.
Unfortunate. But the JPI score, 7 out of 10.
70%.
And that's what matters.
Just play it. 70% accurate on 10 high-class categories of the Oscars. Not seeing most of these movies, we were able to make correct guesses.
Yeah, we lost out on song, visual effects, and animated movie. So if you would have asked me going into the Oscars, which ones would you think you're going to get wrong? It'd probably be those 3.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's get back to the task at hand. Nick, we are watching a 90s throwback childhood nostalgic movie of The Indian in the Cupboard from 1995.
I mean, this was, yes, like you said, a staple growing up. Indian in the Cupboard. Fun concept. Always enjoyed it as a kid. Didn't really remember it. I mean, remembered the story beats, but didn't quite remember scene for scene everything that happened. So I was excited to go back and watch this one.
How many times have you seen this?
Oh, shoot, man. I have no idea. A handful of times growing up.
We definitely watched it in school.
Yeah.
I remember on one of those free days, Mrs. Lanahan popped this in and we were just, we were loving it.
It was back during the times when you got a VHS, and if you liked that movie, like you were just going to watch it multiple times because that's what you did.
All right. Well, hey, let's get into the basics here. So Indian in the Cupboard, this is directed by Frank Oz, who also directed Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Little Shop of Horrors, and of course, The Muppets Take Manhattan, among others.
I mean, that's a trifecta of greatness right there. Ending with The Muppets Take Manhattan. I mean,
what's even better is that, I saw in the beginning directed by Frank Oz, and I thought, wow, why is his name so familiar? And I was looking up the movies he directed, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I've heard of these, but this movie is directed by Yoda, ladies and gentlemen. Frank Oz is the voice of Yoda. I was like, that's where I've seen his name before.
Yeah, I that's funny. I didn't really look it up, but I saw the name, and I was like, gosh, man. I've seen that.
Why do I know your name?
Frank Oz.
He is on the slate in this movie. I did catch, actually my wife caught it because she is a keen eye for this stuff. She caught Kathleen Kennedy, aka Queen of Star Wars, one of the producers on this. As we know, she started out on Raiders of the Lost Ark as an assistant to Spielberg, and she has just skyrocketed ever since.
It's got to be more than her second time on the show, right?
Oh no, she's been featured any great childhood or popular movie of today's times. It's like she's pretty much a producer on it.
Good for her.
Okay, Nick, who is in this movie?
This movie stars Hal Scardino, a gentleman by the name of Lightfoot, and Lindsay Krause.
And if you haven't heard of any of those guys, it's okay. I was looking it up. Hal Scardino, he is our main child actor in this movie. Didn't really go on to do a whole bunch of other stuff.
When you go on their IMDb and their profile picture on IMDb is still them as a kid, you're like, yeah,
Or like them from the movie you know them from.
yeah. You're like, okay, this was it. You're one and done.
Yeah. Richard Jenkins, shout out him though. He is the dad in Step Brothers, as we all know.
I started to put together a conspiracy theory that this was a prequel to Step Brothers, but it kind of started to fall apart, so I gave up on it. But
it was unraveling.
Yeah.
Steve Coogan shows up later. Great comedic actor.
Mm-hmm. David Keith,
not to be confused with Keith David, who is a friend of the show, aka Childs from The Thing and the cop from Volcano. However, Lightfoot got some information on this gentleman, aka Gary Davis. He is an active member of the Cherokee Nation. Back in 1992, he started his own business, Red Vinyl Records, and then he soon emerged as the first Native American rap artist. So he actually started out as a rapper with a stage name of Lightfoot.
Huh.
He began releasing his own brand of indigenous rap independently, and then in 1993, he started touring in the U.S. By 94, he's returned from a musical performance in Rome, Italy, where he then caught the attention of Paramount Pictures and subsequently won the starring role in the feature film, The Indian in the Cupboard. So he got his role in this from his rap game because he's from them streets.
Good for him.
You know what I'm saying?
I would have never guessed.
Yeah, me neither. I thought that was interesting. So this movie, we got an estimated budget of $45 million and a box office of $35.6 million. So we got a little bit of a loss here. Nothing to bankrupt the company, but you know, what you got to do.
It's a good question.
So this one's up there for a little family 90s movie.
Yeah. As you can imagine, the miniature people probably had quite a bit of work behind the scenes on it. So I can see where the budget went. And we'll talk about that.
Bunch of money definitely went into the visual effects, which I'm excited to talk about. We can't start talking about it until we get into plot talk. And before we do that, I need you to read this log line.
Omri, a young boy growing up in Brooklyn, receives an odd variety of presents for his birthday. A wooden cupboard from his older brother, a set of antique keys from his mother, and a plastic Indian from his best friend Patrick.
That is a weird eclectic group of gifts to get on your 9th birthday, but hey, Omri's got it, and we watched it, and now we're going to talk about it in Plot Talk. Plot Talk. All right, so we open up on this movie. We got some typical opening credits. This is where I noticed there was a guy named David Keith in here, and not Keith David. And we're actually looking at a bunch of figurines of Native Americans, Indigenous peoples, Indian. This is kind of giving me flashbacks of Wind Talkers, because I remember looking up like, how do I address like certain groups, and it's just like it's all personal preference. If you're an Indigenous person, you know, Native Americans, American Indian, they're all like okay to say, but like it really depends. This movie and this book it's based on is called The Indian in the Cupboard. The complicated, intricate history, culture, it's not black and white. There's not just like one tribe. It's called The Indian in the Cupboard. We might say Native American, we might say Indigenous folks, or we might just say Little Bear, which is Lightfoot's name in this movie. But we see a bunch of figurines of Native Americans, and this actually is a practical or real set piece in the movie, because Omri does kind of pluck some figurines from this display case. This is like a display case in the school that he goes to. Mm-hmm. And it starts out in school. He's just getting out, meets up with his mom, and they're heading home for his birthday get together with his family and his friend Patrick and Patrick's mom.
And we're at this birthday party. Omri's opening up his presents. First thing he gets, skateboard. Super cool, right? Kid.
Hell yeah.
Grabs his skateboard. And then he receives a cupboard from his brother. This is really glossed over for me. It made me laugh. His brother just kind of like pulls this cupboard out from under the table. First of all, I don't even know where you get a cupboard like this anymore, or why a boy would want it. But everybody seems pretty hype.
This is like street kids. They're probably just hanging out on the street. They're skateboarding. They're riffraffs. And he probably literally walked by this like old ass cupboard and thought, boom, Omri's birthday present is right here. I'm going to get this, like almost as a joke, but also like, I did get you something. but he does clean it. So it's like he kind of put effort in, but like at the same time he didn't, just because he just got like an old ass cupboard off the sidewalk.
Yeah, but I would expect the parents to be like, what is that? Like, why would you give? But his parents are like, wow, that's a nice cupboard. That's a thoughtful gift.
The parents are a little kind of pushovers, a little bit weird actually. The brother that gives him the cupboard is actually Gillen. This is Vincent Kartheiser. I don't know how you say his name, but this dude's a series regular on Mad Men. Never seen the show, but he all grown up and he was on Mad Men, 92 episodes, I believe.
Good for him.
So if you're a Mad Men fan, you should go watch Indian in the Cupboard for Pete Campbell, because he's there and he gave Omri, House Gardino, an old ass cabinet cupboard.
As if it was just a normal thing to give to a young boy.
Yeah, and everyone's like, oh, sick.
Yeah, and they're like, is there a key for it? He's like, I don't know. And he's like, no, I didn't. There wasn't a key. And his mom's like, oh, I have a bunch of keys. I collect them. It's like, who are you people?
This is where I'm starting to question the mom. Like, it's really weird. She's just like, I collect them. And then Patrick's mom is like, you collect them? And then she says, ever since I was a child. Super expository, but thanks.
Later on, Patrick and Omri are now taking his new skateboard out, and they just get to hanging out under an overpass with a bunch of other kids skating. I'm like, this is 90s. Like, this reminds me of Free Willy almost, just like skateboard kids out and about.
I think we were talking about it. We said like every 90s kid movie, like someone was always on a skateboard.
Yeah,
it was cool.
Under this underpass, they're not skating. They're just kind of shy. Like, you could tell they're kind of nerdy kids, want to be cool.
Also, they're 9 years old, and there's a bunch of like teenagers skating.
Yeah, I wouldn't let my 9-year-old go skate under the overpass. That's me personally.
Probably where they picked up the cupboard.
It's probably very cupboard adjacent. Yeah, and at this point, Patrick gives Omri this little toy Indian and tells him it's an antique. Why didn't Patrick's mom help him pick out a gift for Omri? He just like left it up to her son to just like get this plastic figurine to give his best friend on his birthday. It seemed like a weird...
Maybe they gave him a gift off screen, but this is definitely just a gift from Patrick, and he probably stole it from the school display, honestly, because that's where we get all these figurines from.
Yeah.
And it's really weird because he's like, here, I got this for you. It reminded me of you. It's like, okay.
Well, we'll see later that Omri does have other toy, like Indians inspired toys. He has a teepee. He has another chief.
Maybe it's like because he has a bunch of action like figures, so maybe it's like, yeah, maybe that's why it just reminded.
Could be
Patrick. Yeah,
but Omri does get a working key from his mom that fits his cupboard magically, and he locks the Indian inside of the cupboard. And we're like,
now we have our Indian in the cupboard.
Yeah, we're like, we're not wasting any time with this Indian in the cupboard. And then we cut to next morning when Omri starts hearing some tapping noise come from the cupboard, and he opens it up, and we see Little Bear for the first time. And I'm sitting here like, dude, we're 8 minutes into this movie, and we've already got
Indian is in the cupboard. Now he's out the cupboard.
Yeah,
well, not yet.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I kind of like this. I didn't have a bunch of like lead into this. It was like, hey, we sold you a bill of goods called The Indian in the Cupboard, and we're gonna deliver.
Here's the Indian in the cupboard, baby.
Yeah. So I was like, wow. You know, a lot of movies will like make a comment of like, all right, we are 45 minutes into this movie, and I have no idea what's happening.
or
this movie,
or like many other movies we watch,
when
we have 10 minutes left, and we're like, how is this supposed to end? Which like happens a lot. So frightened by Omri's size, the tiny Indian pulls out a dagger and points it at Omri. I gotta say, this first shot of like childlike wonder from Omri looking at Little Bear, this is the start of the uncomfortably long takes of this kid's dopey ass face,
mouth breathing the whole time.
Like
it's kind of got some messed up teeth too, so you really get
they're
like,
not quite. Yeah. He actually kind of looked like Littlefoot from The Land Before Time. Like
there you go.
Like a person version of the little long neck.
I imagine it's how Napoleon Dynamite looked when he was like 9.
Yes. Gosh.
The breathing through the mouth, just like, you're like, oh, Omri. Also, just thinking about this out loud, these parents, going back to these parents being weird, their sons' names are Omri and Gillen. Who's naming these kids?
The other one is Adel or ADL. It's ADIEL. Questionable parents.
Yeah.
Parents are named Victor and Jane, and I feel like they might be on drugs this entire movie. Because the mom collects keys. The dad doesn't really care that his son just buries tools in the backyard.
Oh, I'm going to have questions about that.
Like, we'll go buy some more. It's okay.
I don't know. The house is nice. They're clearly successful. Our small Indian, who we later learn is Little Bear, has this dagger and he pulls it out. And Omri like goes out to touch him, and Little Bear stabs him in the finger. Freaks out Omri. Omri's like, "Ow! Like that hurt." Kind of like freaks out. Locks the Indian back in the cupboard. And he's like, "All right, I need to keep this a secret.
Keep this under lock and key and in a cupboard." This is where we learn, like, so he's alive. He stabs him. He locks him back in. And then the next morning he goes to check on him. And then he opens it and he's back to being a little plastic figurine.
Yeah.
And then he just he gets super depressed. He's like, "Oh man, like my
he's like, I'm sick.
That tiny man that stabbed me is not there anymore." And then he closes it and he locks it again. And this is where we understand the mechanism that you put him in as a toy, lock it, open it. They're alive, lock it again, back, wash, rinse, repeat. That's the order. Yep. You can put him back as a toy. You can put him back as a real person.
Yeah, so he's feeling ill, and then the next morning he opens it back up, sees Little Bear.
I think it's that night. I think it's that night.
So it's that night.
So he's like, "Oh, I feel sick," at the dinner table, and then he goes back in, and since he previously closed and locked it, he hears that same rustling and kind of knocking, and then he opens it up again, and then he like flips on the light. Little Bear's like, "Oh snap, like this guy can control the weather or control the daylight,
it's night or day." Yeah.
So he's thinking like, "Oh, this guy's a great spirit." They do get a proper introduction now. You know, he's like, "Oh, are you like a real Indian?" Little Bear says, "I'm Onondaga. I'm part of the Wolf Clan. I'm Iroquois. My name is Okwai, aka Little Bear." So, you know, kind of get like an easier name for English speaking audiences to identify this guy. So Iroquois is probably the most broad part of his introduction. It's actually a French word, which loosely translates to snake. So officially the Iroquois are known as the Haudenosaunee, which means people of the longhouse, which actually does come up later because this, I think in this same night scene, he like gives him a plastic teepee because it was kind of like, oh, Indians sleep in teepees.
Yeah.
First off, he's like terrible because it was plastic. And then he puts the plastic teepee in the cupboard, and then it becomes like a real wood canvas. Like, I don't know how this fucking cupboard works.
Yeah, so I thought it just worked to like for like living things, but like no. Yeah. Apparently anything just you put in plastic there will become real.
So it was kind of funny because kind of like shed some light on like, you know, stereotypes like, oh, all Indians sleep in teepees, and they're like, no, like we're like Haudenosaunee, we sleep in the longhouse. And he ends up building his own longhouse later. And then so the Haudenosaunee are actually a group of indigenous people consisting of 5 nations, one being the Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, Oneida, and Mohawk. And later on, a 6th nation was added, the Tuscarora. So we learn that Onondaga refers to the Onondaga people, which translates to the people of the hills. And then these nations are around what is commonly known today as upstate New York along Lake Ontario. We're getting like real specific, like this guy has a backstory or he's a real person from history. We don't know. I have a whole talking point and question about this, but it's nice. This is like a nice introduction to like kid audiences. Hey, it's not cowboys and Indians. It's like Native American culture runs so deep. There's so many tribes. There's so many languages. A couple times this is brought up throughout the movie, which I appreciated. So this is our actor of Lightfoot, aka Little Bear. And when I found out that Iroquois is actually a French word, it made a lot of sense because he was actually fighting the French alongside the British. So that's how we know that he spoke English.
Very good English.
Oh, extremely good English. It was almost like this.
Flawless.
It was almost like this guy was born in Upland, California or something. Yes, I looked it up.
So yeah, so Omri's learning a lot about him. He gets him like a little tray of dirt and some tools. He steals an axe from a knight figurine. Funny. He takes the knight figurine, puts him in the cupboard, makes him real, steals his axe, locks him back in the cupboard, turns him back into a toy, and then just like throws him on the ground. It's like, okay.
I mean, we're going to talk about this after the plot talk, but like, what's going through that guy's head right now? Was he just like plucked out of his reality and now he's missing his axe?
See, this is
we'll get into the wormhole later, but it's a wild concept that is not explained off the rip. We're just in it, baby. So yeah, Little Bear does want to. He's like, all right, well, like first off, send me back. I don't want to be here. And then Omri's like, well, you just got here. And then he shows him the TP, and then he turns the TP real. And I think Little Bear's just kind of like enthralled and like, maybe this is a spiritual experience. Maybe I got to see this through. So I guess I'll stick around, because I was kind of confused of his motive, because I was like, why don't you just request to go home? Why doesn't Omri just send you back home? Obviously, Omri's like, this is awesome. I got my little like own talking man who can be my little friend. I think Little Bear is just like, all right, like, let's just see what this is all about, because I'm not dead yet.
Yeah, and he's having a good time. They're becoming close, not close, but they're starting to understand each other. Right, it's a little bit of a relationship. Like I said, Omri goes and gets him stuff to build his longhouse, and so like so far we're like, all right, good little relationship blossoming here between our two friends.
And Little Bear is from like a completely different time period. He's from the year
1760s, I believe.
1761.
Yeah. So Omri also finds out here that Little Bear is a widower.
So his like decision to go back was kind of put on ice when he was like enthralled with what was happening and seeing all this magic witchcraft stuff come from this cupboard that this kid has, or great spirit, as he says. So actually, when he reveals that he's a widower, this is actually when he decides to stay in these modern times. Maybe it's just better conditions than fighting in the French and British War. Or maybe it's just, when he's thinking about his super dead wife, he might be looking at Omri and thinking, you know what, maybe he's not in fact a great spirit and he's just a child and he needs my help. Or maybe he is the great spirit. But I feel like at this point in the movie, maybe he felt like a divine calling was telling him to guide Omri and be his mentor. He saw this as a spiritual sign that this is where his path had brought him to, and this is his calling. So he has to teach Omri how to be a man, because that's what he was doing with his nephew right before he got plucked out of existence of who knows what. If it's an alternate reality, if it's a totally fabricated consciousness, who knows? But the last thing he remembers, he was walking his nephew through the forest on this coming to age, be a man, adult mission. And so I think at this moment when he said, oh, my wife died, I think that's when something kind of sparked in his brain. He's like, I got to hang out and teach this kid, or see if he's the great spirit. I don't know.
Yeah, Little Bear is really rolling with the punches here, because
he don't care.
Because we'll see here in the next scene that another Native American figure does not roll with the punches as well.
No, it's sad.
It's this chieftain, and he has a longbow, which Little Bear wants. He needs I need some weapons. Earlier there was an incident with a bird, and he's like, I need to protect myself.
Yeah, when the bird comes out, that's when he gets like pecked, I guess. We don't see it. It's off screen. This is when Omri's getting him his little dirt soil bin or whatever the hell so he can make his longhouse. And he's like, I need husks. And Omri's like looking in the medicine cabinet for like corn husks because he doesn't know what the hell that is. And then he brings to life a medic from his brother's room. And this is Steve Coogan. So he plays
Tommy.
Sergeant Tommy Atkins. Yeah, so he's like a British soldier. And Tommy's like, he's gaslit to believe that this is a dream. Whereas Little Bear is like, I am hyper aware of what's happening. Like I'm an Indian in a cupboard and there's some giant dopey ass kid face staring me down. I'm going to stab his finger.
Maybe he just happened to be sleeping when Omri snatched his soul from his body.
Yeah. Yeah. Omri's the soul snatcher, dude.
Also, why do these people have like exact replica versions of them as figurines in the future?
Okay. No, we're going to get into this later. We're going to get into this. I have a whole talking point about it. I don't know how it works, but we're going to break it down. Damn it. Steve Coogan, Tommy, he does mend the wound. There's a pretty hilarious moment here because he's like, oh, you're a dang Indian. So, we get like old timey phrases and like kind of stereotypes and prejudice. Even like Little Bear later on says some insensitive stuff, and other guys do.
I love it. I called it out.
It was kind of funny. But it's kind of just like satire of the times. Steve Coogan puts his hand up and goes, "How?
You sitting bull.
No.
How? How?
And then Little Bear does the same thing back, because he's like, I don't know what that is, because it's like the stereotype of the general umbrella Native American greeting. Little Bear doesn't know it. He's like, I don't know what language this is. I don't know what you're doing, so I'll just do it back to you. Maybe this is like a British thing. But it was pretty funny. I thought that was good to bring that, to make light of it.
Yeah.
Would you like to wake up now?
No, I never want to wake up. Mud, German shells, awful bloody rats. They eat at wounded men. Ugh.
So Steve Coogan's like, he's chilling. The knight that he brought to life is chilling. He brought a whole bunch of action figurines to life too, like Darth Vader, T-Rex, RoboCop,
G.I. Joe, a Star Trek character.
Couple Star Trek aliens. And I remember that scene very well. That was a scene that stuck with me, and it was really good. It was really great. Just going to call it out now early on, put a pin in it. Visual effects are really good in this movie, especially for being 1995. I was highly impressed. Not surprised. ILM did it. Industrial Light and Magic. Shocker.
We know them. We know them well and love their work.
Tommy was cool come to life. Little Bear's hyper aware, but he's not freaking out. He's just like kind of like fight or flight response. We'll see that later on in the movie. And the knight, I don't know if the knight with the axe is after this or before. Everyone, all the Royal Rumble of Darth Vader fighting the T-Rex and the G.I. Joe, everyone's like, they just kind of respond in the moment. So when we get to this next Native American figure, which he steals from the school display, this is where we see like, oh, not everyone's cool coming out the cupboard.
No.
And this is an older gentleman, and he has a heart attack and dies.
Just right on the spot. Just seizes up, down.
And so Omri's shook. He's shocked. Little Bear runs up to the older guy and says, oh, he's dead. So when he dies, Omri's like scared, and Little Bear's like, yo, we got to bury this guy. And then Omri's like, what? Like, can't we just send him back? And then at this point, Little Bear's like all pissed off. He's like really angry with Omri. Gets really aggressive.
Yeah, this really shakes Little Bear.
We kind of get like a crazy question, like a dark reality question. Do people die here? And your child's just like, oh my God. And like Omri's like, oh, I don't want to think about it. And then Little Bear's like, yo, this is a part of life. You got to think about it.
Yeah, he actually says something that like proves that he's a kid, because when Little Bear asks him, do people die here? Omri goes, yes, but we never see it. And it's like, oh, as a boy, obviously you don't see death.
From his time, I'm sure that was super common because, sickness or just hunting or fighting like a rival tribe, you're probably going to see a lot of death back in the day.
Just getting an infection back then.
Yeah. It's not good. So he's like, all right, we got to bury him. And then when he realizes, this is his confirmation. Omri is not a great spirit. He is literally just a giant child that brought me out of my reality into this goddamn cupboard. So he's like, fine, send him back. And then Omri's like kind of second guessing himself. He's like, what if he was alone? And then Little Bear is like, then he's alone. This is where I started understanding like, okay, this is going to be kind of like an apprentice and a mentor story ish.
I also got touches of another kind of theme throughout the movie, which is like, this is the first time like Omri has had like consequences for his actions of using this cupboard. And so there's a few times it's mentioned like spirits and God and like being in charge and letting people like live their own life. And so like there's this theme of Omri playing God, and how like at first it was all fun and he was, playing with people and kind of doing what he wanted, being kind of selfish with it. And now it's like, oh wait, maybe it isn't easy. Maybe
I shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, that'll continue. As this is happening though, his dad needs to talk to him, and we get this fake out to the audience from the movie. So like the next thing we see is him sitting in front of his dad, and he just goes, I buried him. His dad's like, you did what? And you're like, you think like, oh, he confessed to his dad of like this Indian. And then if we find out, no, he buried his dad's saw blades in the backyard. His dad's like, why would you do that?
Why did he do that? Did we see that?
No.
So I thought it was something to do with him giving Little Bear tools, or when he took a bunch of supplies for him to make his own miniature longhouse.
But there's no reason.
I rewound it. I was like, yeah, no, we're going to say the same thing. I was like, so first off, I didn't see him take any saw blades. And secondly, I was like, he can't shrink the saw blade. This isn't like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. This is a cupboard that brings plastic things to life. So I guess that happened off screen. I don't know. Like, why is Omri burying saw blades?
This happened before the movie started. I have no idea where this happened, but
it's a plot device. This is right after he's getting grilled by Little Bear about being a sheltered bubble boy bitch. The dad's like, I need saw blades. And Omri's like, I buried them. He's like, I used those, dude. Why did you do that?
I used them.
And we don't ever find out why he did that.
No, this kid's just a psychopath.
Richard Jenkins says, all right, we'll go to Yaps. We'll go get a new set. And then so this is after Little Bear calls him out for being a little kid. Omri says, oh, I can go by myself. I've been before. I just never told you. I'm a big boy.
I forget when this happens in the movie, but I'll just call it out now. The relationship does mend between the two. Omri brings a small miniature deer to life and lets Little Bear go and hunt it down.
This is after the death scene of the older guy.
Yeah,
a lot of things happen. He goes to the hardware store. He gets like mugged by a 90s kid bully with like a mohawk. And he's like, you don't deserve that hair, because he's like, Omri's not down with cultural appropriation. So I'm like, okay, Omri's woke.
We got woke real quick.
He runs into Patrick, his friend, and Patrick's like, I got you this cowboy to go with your Indian. And we're like, cool, this can only go right. And then so they walk him back because they see he got mugged, and then goes to his dad, and then hears his brothers upstairs, and the brothers are investigating the longhouse that Little Bear built because they think it's super impressive.
Mm-hmm.
The two brothers are in his room, and we see Gillen's pet rat in those plastic hamster balls. Dude, Omri just straight fucking kicks the shit out of this rat ball.
Dude, he hates it.
He hates this rat. He was like, that was personal, dude. He kicks the shit out of it. It's like bashing on the walls and down the stairs, and then it's like spinning violently. I'm like, what's Omri's deal? And then after all this, he catches up with Little Bear again. Then later on, we get the deer hunting scene. And I thought it was really awkward because he does transport Little Bear around in this old Lego cardboard box.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really it was like an awkward ride to the grass because the deer and Little Bear are in the same box together.
Yeah.
And then they're let out like a Hunger Games style. It's like the ride to the grass must have been really awkward with the deer and Little Bear.
Little Bear kills the deer, and he says, like a saying, killed an animal, like very respectful of it.
He's like, hey, you are now reconciled before you start your next phase or something like that.
Yeah. And then Omri in turn has wrapped up the chieftain, correct?
I think Little Bear wrapped him up, but Omri is now doing the burial ritual.
Did he turn him back into a figurine before this?
No, he's real. Because he was a real dead body. So we have a tiny little corpse in the backyard. And this property is now cursed. Thanks, Omri.
Why didn't he just turn him back into a...
Because that was the whole lesson. Because Omri wanted to send him back and like shut his eyes and not see death and ignore it and say like, this isn't part of life. I don't want to see this.
But if you could have saved him.
But you couldn't save him because they would send him back and then he would be, I guess, dead in his reality.
We don't know that. We don't know this cupboard. Yes, no, that's just a tiny dead man.
Little Bear says bury him. So Omri's like, all right, I'm going to respect the master. I am the Padawan. I'll bury this fool in my backyard. We now live on cursed New York property. Thanks, fucking cupboard.
Awesome.
Thanks, Grandma's key.
The next phase of our movie starts when Omri decides to reveal to Patrick, his friend who gave him the figurine Indian, this is real. Like, check it out. I got an Indian, put him in the cupboard. He's real. His name's Little Bear. He's awesome. And Patrick immediately, I mean, he seemed like a very sweet kid up to this point.
He's very neutral. He was just like he was just like the friend of the main character.
All of a sudden, he turns into this like power hungry,
whiny little
brat
bitch.
Yeah,
annoying.
It's bad. So he wants to bring this cowboy to life. And Omri's like, no, because he promised Little Bear he's not going to turn any more people. He's not going to have any more people show up. Like, he's not, after the chieftain, he's like, no more people. But Patrick does not give a shit.
Yeah, it's so funny. Omri's getting called downstairs, and Patrick is like literally standing next to the fucking magic cupboard. And Omri's like, "Don't touch the cupboard." And Patrick's like, "Okay." And then he's like, "I'm serious." And Patrick just looks at him like, "Okay." And then Omri goes downstairs. Shocker. He puts the cowboy in the cupboard. Omri comes back up, and he's like, "No." Patrick says, "Yeah." And then the cowboy jumps out with his horse. And we are introduced to the character of Boone,
Yeah.
aka Boohoo Boone, because he is a crybaby and has a soft heart, as he reveals later.
This is played by David Keith, who we saw very recently.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you brought this up.
Yes.
Did you deep dive his IMDb?
Nope. Saw the face.
Wow. Top tier facial recognition coming from the corn dog himself. Because Nick,
Saw his face.
I did not clock this. This was a realization after the fact, and I was tickled. And I thought, you know what? Maybe there is a great spirit. Maybe there is an Omri looking over me. Because how do these things happen, man? We see this fool as Jack goddamn Murdoch in Daredevil.
Yep.
And then he shows up as Boone, the cowboy, in the Indian in the cupboard.
Yeah, just one right after the other in the same season. They're just, hey, you don't see him very often, and then all of a sudden, boom, shows up in 2 movies. Serendipity.
Life is weird.
So yeah, Boohoo Boone is here. This is going to throw everything out of whack.
And let me just say something. So Patrick fucking turns Boohoo Boone into a real person. Omri was all high and mighty about the ethics of the cupboard magic with Patrick, despite, summoning Little Bear. At any point, he could just send him back. I don't know if he has like a moral dilemma or like an ethical dilemma in his brain, his little kid brain, but all of a sudden he's got a conscience about this, an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, we got to turn him back. And then Patrick is like, I want him, Omri. Omri, just like grab the cow. You have the cupboard. This is your toy. This is your 9th birthday present.
Yeah.
Like, you can take this cowboy, shove him in the cupboard, and send him back. You didn't do this. Like, you have a connection. You have a bond with Little Bear. You don't know Boohoo Boone. Send Boohoo Boone back, baby.
At the very least, take his gun away.
Patrick is like, no, we need to keep him. Omri like gives into this. Patrick is got to leave. His mom's calling him. And he's like, don't turn him back. And then Omri's like, okay, I won't. And Patrick says, can you bring him to school? It's like, okay, I will. 1, you don't have to honor this. Just send him back. And then 2, if you are going to honor this, if you are going to take another displaced person from their reality or however the hell this works, why not just turn them back overnight and then turn them back to a real person in the morning? So you don't have like a crazy midnight escapade between this cowboy and Little Bear. Save yourself the shootout. Because guess what? That's exactly what happens.
Yeah, early in the AM, we're woken up by a shootout, which I don't know how many arrows Little Bear has, and I don't know how many bullets are in Boone's revolver, but it seems like limitless.
Can we count bullets of displaced humans from their timelines?
I guess not.
Are they real people or are they toys with infinite ammo? We don't know, but Omri does put him in a drawer, and then he opens the drawer and sees that Boone's sleeping and then walks away and goes to sleep. I'm like, close the drawer, dumbass.
Yeah.
He rappels down a shoestring, and then they start the shootout. Little Bear shoots an arrow, hits the bottom of one of Omri's sneakers. And I don't know if you kids know about this, but back in our day, we had these light up sneakers. When you would take a step, there would be lights that would come on the heel, and the arrow hits the heel and the shoe lights up. And I'm like, I love this.
Yeah.
Super good touch. I loved it. I thought that was great.
There was a few like little callback things.
Shout out to whoever did that.
Boone and Little Bear are hostile towards each other, but they're also hostile towards Omri, because at one point Boone's like, I'm hungry. Like, I want some coffee. Omri's like, well, okay, well, I'll make you breakfast. And then they're both just like, you cook like a woman? And like Little Bear's like, you are a woman.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, shit. he's just trying to be nice.
It's like, Omri cooks like a woman. You are a woman. He's just like back-to-back burns.
Yeah.
And then Omri's like, you guys are so old-fashioned. It's like kind of fun, lighthearted social commentary about how times have changed.
Now, he's going to take Boone to school. He's not going to take Little Bear. He's like, you wouldn't like school anyway, Little Bear. Yada yada. And he's like, take me. Like I'm going. If Texas Man can go, he like calls Boone Texas Man. And he's like, if he can go, then I can go. And again, Armory's just giving in to everyone around him instead of setting boundaries like he should. So they get thrown in a fanny pack and brought to school.
Yeah, Omri is transporting Boone and Little Bear in a yellow fanny pack, carefully walking into school. Patrick is waiting on pins and needles for his little cowboy alive slave to come to school because he's a sociopath. They meet up and Patrick grabs the fanny pack from Omri. They go into class and Omri's like super nervous, staring at the fanny pack, can't concentrate on the presentation at hand, and is just only thinking about the two little tiny humans in the fanny pack. We come to a realization that not only Boone, but Little Bear is in the fanny pack too. These two characters from two different timelines who traditionally, butting heads, they're groups of people.
I mean, they were trying to kill each other 2 hours ago.
The old cowboys and Indians trope. So they're forced to be in an enclosed space. I assume they were disarmed. So at least Omri did that. But Little Bear and Boone, they're just broing out in the fanny pack. Boone, having a soft heart, cries after learning that Little Bear's wife passed away from smallpox. They talk about like kids. And so did Little Bear have a kid? Because he said, I want to have another kid. But in his story, his backstory, he said, I was guiding my nephew.
Yeah,
So
maybe his kid passed too. I don't know.
Yeah, or I don't know. But he's like, hey, like, when I have another kid, I probably feel a lot better. And then Boone says, kids are the sun, the moon, and the stars. And then we get a shot of Little Bear, and he's kind of reflecting on his bond with Omri. And he's like, this is why I'm here. This is why I was an Indian in the cupboard, and now I'm an Indian in the fanny pack in this elementary school class. I see your next bullet point here says Patrick being a bitch.
Oh, dude, I've never wanted to punch a child, and I know it's acting, but like this character, Omri leaves class. His teacher's like, you seem really distracted. Or no, his teacher's talking to him because Omri's writing this story like in class
about what's happening,
that he stares with. Yeah. And his teacher's like, that's really creative. You have an Indian, a toy Indian, and you put him in a cupboard and he comes to life. And then you get to learn
He's like,
about
the Iroquois people are really cool. They actually had their own constitution. And this goes back to the 5 nations. They made their own peace treaty.
Yeah, teacher's super knowledgeable about it all.
The teacher's like, this is really great. Like, I'm happy you're learning about the Iroquois. And Omri's like, okay. Because he's looking at Patrick, who is being like a little bitch and a showboat. He's hot dogging down the hall. He can overhear Patrick talking to these students because he's about to show off the cowboy and Little Bear to his fellow classmates as just like for clout, for like status, just to be a show off kid. And Omri's like, no, like, don't do it. And then at this point, Patrick, again, sounding like a whiny little bitch, is like, I was just having fun, Omri.
Yeah, the voice. Teacher comes over like, yo, what's going on?
Because they start shoving each other.
Yeah, and Omri's like, nothing. And Patrick just starts going like, I'll show him, Omri. I'll show him. Like, I could do it. And you're just like,
power move.
You're just like, dude, this kid is fucking psycho. And he's just like screaming and yelling like the kind of kid you see out in public that you just want to like smack upside the head. And so finally, like, the teacher's like, show me. And Omri's like, it's nothing. They're just toys. They're just plastic, because Omri had explained plastic to Little Bear earlier when with the teepee, like what it was made out of. And so like Little Bear and Boone get the hint. So when they pull them out of the fanny pack, they're like posing like they're a toy.
And can I point something out here at this moment? I actually really appreciated the callback to the Steve Coogan scene when he did the how hand gesture. That's the position that Little Bear took when he was pretending to be a toy. So he like adapted to, oh, this is how this modern day views Indians, the stereotype. I'm just going to put my hand up like I'm doing that like stupid thing that doesn't exist. So I thought that was like really smart. I like that.
Yeah.
And the teacher doesn't question how hyper realistic these toys look. Like the kids obviously realize, oh, you are flesh and blood. And the teacher just looks at him like, all right, well, why don't you two figure this out and get to class?
Omri has this thing that makes Patrick snap back to life. He goes like, they're people. You can't play with people.
It's just after that scene climaxes and the teacher realizes, okay, nothing to see here, move along. Then they just kind of walk away together and then go home.
Yeah. And so now they're hanging out. They're having a sleepover. The girls music video comes on from Motley Crue on the TV, which is just like a bunch of girls shaking their ass.
Couple 9-year-olds just like casually watching this.
Yeah. And they're like, what is this? What is happening here? Boone understands the technology very well and says, hey, hand me that clicker. So he knows what remotes are. So they flip through and they get to this movie, which is called The Last of His Tribe. And it's just basically cowboys slaughtering the Apache Indians. Boone, who has like, we're like, wow, he's turned a corner. Like he's better. He understands maybe the plight of Little Bear, and he's boohoo Boone. He's a soft guy. Just gets real hyped up about this. He's like, yeah, get him.
Snaps into a Slim Jim.
Yosemite Sam's up into the air.
Yeah. Not yet.
Not yet.
But he's hooting and hollering on top of Patrick's knee. And Little Bear takes notice of this program and is like, oh my God, like this isn't my tribe, but my people that look like me are just getting mowed down.
Actually a really cool like camera shot here. Where it was like behind Little Bear's head and he like has his bow pulled out and it's you kind of see him looking up at the TV screen. It's almost as if he's like in that scene, like looking back and forth at all of the cowboys up on the hill taking shots at him. And so he's just like, it was almost like a PTSD thing. He's like sweating. He's losing it.
Exactly. And it kind of reminded me of like a dog watching TV when they recognize another dog on the TV and they're just like darting across the screen. Kind of same phenomenon in that shot. Little Bear is pointing his bow and arrow and he's like, oh, they're over there. Oh, they're over there now. They're over there. And then this is when Boone shoots off a round and then Little Bear turns, points, shoots an arrow, not in the heart, as we learned later, but just right in the chest.
Yeah, just sticks him.
Shoots Boone.
Everyone's freaking out, and they're like, we don't know what to do. They want to bring the medic back, Tommy, our medic back, but the key is lost. I don't know how you lose this key. This is like the most important thing that you should own. It should be on a necklace around your neck. It should be always in a drawer. Like, I don't know how you just lose it.
Well, I think he left it in the cupboard keyhole, but earlier the brother took the cupboard away because Omri hid the plastic hamster ball for his rat.
Oh, the rat ball.
So that the rat wouldn't be mobile. But as we learn later, the goddamn rat escaped and now he's loose in the house.
It's more mobile than ever.
It's hella mobile now. The key gets lost after the brother takes the cabinet, probably fell out. Later on, we discover it's below the floorboard through a crack.
So we see it through a crack. It's a nice house. I don't know why there's so many cracks in the floorboard.
It's cursed. It's been cursed ever since that old man bit the dust.
But there is one that just perfectly shows the key, and Omri can't get it. But who can? Who's small enough to go get this key? Little Bear. We do hear the rat in the floorboard, so we know that it's there. Little Bear is like, I can go do it. He can't get through the crack, but Omri's like, over there's a loose floorboard, and it pans over. This floorboard is not loose. It is a whole slat of flooring that is just like pulled halfway up.
Well, the mom said something about the dad doing work on it or something. He said the dad tried to get the floorboard up and get the rat. So I think it was just up already.
Okay, because he was just like, it's a loose floorboard. Pans over like, that's not loose.
Yeah, it's like
your whole
like
floor is coming
degree.
off. You're just like, my guy, your floor is up. He almost gets killed by the rat, but he comes out victorious because he's a Little Bear. He's a warrior. Omri grabs him, and everything's just fine. All of a sudden, you get like a jump scare from the rat lunging out of the floorboards. I was like, holy shit. Patrick like snatches the rat out of midair. You're just like, oh, damn.
Patrick's a ninja.
Rat snatcher. So with the key, we bring Tommy back, Steve Coogan, our medic.
I want to shout out the callback from his last appearance because he's talking about how it is being in the war. And he says, it sucks. There's death, there's guns, bombs, rats. And then he says rats eat at wounded men. So then this whole like subplot of this goddamn rat versus Omri matchup throughout this movie has been boiling to a boiling point. And then Omri repeats the line and says, rats eat away at wounded men. So Boone is down for the count, and they know this rat's out and about, and they're like, we gotta stay up in shifts. And of course Patrick is like, I'll give you $1 million if you take the first shift. And Omri's like, okay. And then Patrick like runs to bed and goes to sleep like a little baby back bitch.
He just hasn't learned yet.
No.
But Tommy does heal Boone. Boone recovers in like 30 seconds flat.
Boom.
He's good. I don't know what Tommy gave him, but
Boone.
He's good. And now Omri realizes it's time to return Little Bear and Boone back to their time periods.
This is after he stares at his dopey ass face in the mirror for 10 seconds.
Yeah. We learn what Omri's thinking because he does go to school the next day, and he's constantly kind of reading little blurbs of his story out in class. And so this time, one of the blurbs we get is how, he realizes I have to send them back because I can't control them and they have to be able to live their own lives. So it's a little bit more of like the like we're saying, like the playing God, where he's like, he realizes like he can't do that. He can't be this godlike figure. And I mean, this came up earlier too, when Boone says to Little Bear something to the effect of God sure has a way of messing with people, like referring to Omri and what's going on. And Little Bear's like, there are no gods here. You're like, dang.
He's like, I lost my faith. So later on that night, Little Bear says, hey, I'll see you when the sun comes out. And Omri's like, yep, one last time, one last ride. And they go to sleep. Omri does go to put a female Native American toy in the cabinet. Little Bear catches this and says, no, don't do it. What if she has a life? Maybe she has a husband. Maybe she has a kid. Omri says, I don't want you to be alone. And Little Bear's like, yo, like I'm in a 9-year-old's kid's bedroom in New York. Life's not up to me. You can't play God. I have no control over it. Like, this is what it is.
So
like,
was the plan to bring the woman there and then they'd live in his bedroom?
No,
together?
Because
he was already going to send her back.
So I thought,
could he send her back with what powers does Omri have?
Exactly. Yeah. This was a big question. I think he intended to bring her to life. Maybe he had a secret agenda and wanted to convince Little Bear to stay in his reality by providing him with a wife and a purpose and something to work and live for selfishly.
Dangling the old wife in front of him.
But the way it was presented was, I don't want you to be alone, so I'll bring this lady to life and then I'll send you guys back together. It's like, do they need to be like hugging in order to do that? What are the rules of this freaking witchcraft cupboard, dude?
I don't know.
So he's like, don't do it. Next morning, Omri and Patrick say their goodbyes to the two tiny men before they lock them back in the cupboard and send them home to their respective timelines.
But Boone has a lot of good questions. It's all the same questions I have. He's like,
yeah,
am I just going to go back to where I was? Like,
he says, am I going to go back to the last thing I remember, or are we going to go ahead? And Omri's like, I don't know. So the night before, he was willing to bring in this random lady and say, you're going to marry this guy, and then send them back to get, like, he doesn't know how it works.
No, I'm glad Boone has these questions. Because I'm like, thank you, Boone.
I like how they bookend the movie with just, here's this cupboard, no idea how it works, and at the very end they're asking all the right questions. They're like, I don't know, bye.
Also, the figurines have to like go into their like pose before they go back, the pose that they came out in. Also Boone has a horse.
Yeah, he had a horse.
What was the horse doing like throughout the whole movie?
The horse, when he first came out of the cupboard, the horse like jumped out of the cupboard. He got flung off of the horse. And then the whole fight between Lightfoot and Boone starts because Boone accuses Lightfoot of stealing his horse.
Yeah.
So the horse is there. It doesn't really do a whole lot, but it's there.
So what I'm saying, there's a live miniature horse in your room.
What's the horse doing this whole time?
Yeah. What the horse doing?
What the horse doing, dude?
Why wasn't he battling that rat?
So they say their goodbyes. They go into this weird realm dimension,
the shadow realm,
where Little Bear and Omri meet and to scale for the first time. You know, I'm watching this movie. The whole time I'm like, yo, Lightfoot and Hal Scardino have not been in the same room this entire time when making this movie. And then we finally get them having a shot together. They're in a forest, and it's reminiscent of Little Bear walking his nephew through the forest, giving him his adulthood lesson. And where we learn, oh, okay, this is this is all about the bond of this kid and this displaced person from a different timeline, different reality. Don't know how it works again, but they have a connection. So they say their goodbyes, they do their signature action figure poses, and then they get turned back into a little plastic toy.
Could we just go back 1 second? I had this kind of in my nitpicks, but I'll bring it up now because it was this moment. We have a really like ominous ending between the two where Little Bear's like, "Are we still a great people?" And Omri's like,
Omri lays it on
you're
him.
always a great people, but others aren't good people, like signifying like you're going to get slaughtered, which, I mean, Little Bear saw the movie. So, I mean, you can kind of put two and two together, but there's a lot of like Little Bear being like, "But we'll be okay, right?" And Omri's just like, "No." It's
like, things work out for us, right?
You're going to get a lot of casinos in the future. Okay, bye. And it's just, that's true. It's like a very weird ending where it's just like,
bit of a weird choice to put that in there, but he kept it real.
how is Little Bear ever going to sleep again with this knowledge? He's going to be looking over his shoulder all the time. Like, when are we getting slaughtered?
We're going to talk about this later when we deep dive this phenomenon, but is he going to know this information? What's the repercussions of this? Does he change the timeline? We don't know. Omri's back in class. He's wrapping up his story that he's been writing, which is his real story. Everybody thinks it's fictional. And then we end on his dopey face and it's credits. And that is The Indian in the Cupboard, directed by Frank Oz. Nick, do you have any nitpicks?
Nitpicks.
I feel like we just really underutilized this cupboard. Like, the cupboard was just a way to get a Native American into the room. Like, I just feel like there were so many possibilities here, man. You could have had like toy cars. You could have put like fake money in there.
Yeah.
You put Monopoly money in there. Would that become real money? Like,
yeah.
We really could have like utilized this cupboard more, like just creating a bigger world for Little Bear, like a bunch, like every little figurine you could think of, like bring it to life.
Well, he did that with the Royal Rumble, and then he saw it didn't pan out too well because everyone got hostile.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like there were just so many possibilities, and really, we just never. I mean, even apparently inanimate things, right? Like teepees.
Yeah, I like what you said about the car. Give Little Bear a car.
How sick of a scene would that have been? Little Bear just whipping around.
Damn, missed opportunity. My nitpick is this kid's face.
Oh, it's such a bad face.
House Cartino's face. It's so distracting, and Frank Oz decided to put way too much of his dopey face on screen. Like, they would linger on this kid's mouth breathing face for so long. It made me uncomfortable. The final shot of the movie, when he's telling his story, the camera does not move away from Omri well over a minute because he's doing his speaking lines. And then when his speaking lines wrap up, I rewound the tape. I put on my timer. Nick,
how long?
The camera is on his speechless face for 45 seconds.
No.
After his speaking lines have ended. And it gets progressively funnier because he starts out like looking down and looking very neutral. And then he starts looking up into space and then opens his mouth with that Napoleon Dynamite look on his face. And the music is swelling and the camera keeps on rolling. And they're not controlling, and it keeps going, and they're certainly not slowing on his face. And he starts to like do a slow. Remember in Zootopia, the sloths?
Yeah,
and it takes like a full 10 seconds for him to get a smile out. Same energy here, same phenomenon. I was cracking up at the end here, and I'm sure that is not their intentions when doing the shot.
Thought it was going to be really
powerful.
Yeah.
All right, talking points. Here we go. What's up with JFK and Sam?
Always something to say about JFK in the story time.
So the story time, there's this kid named Sam, and his story is about JFK. And I bring this up because I don't know, were they trying to say something here? Because they'll bring something up, like Omri will say his piece, and then the teacher's like, "Oh, that's cute, good imagination," and then they'll go, "Sam, you got anything?" JFK was born at blah, blah, blah. He was the youngest president ever. And then he stops talking. He stares at his teacher with dead eyes. And then we cut away to the next scene. And then this movie ends on a JFK snippet about how he was assassinated.
Yeah.
As we're staring down House Gardino's dopey ass face for 45 seconds. It says, Sam, JFK. JFK was assassinated in Texas in 1965 or whatever. What's up with JFK and Sam?
Maybe he's going to be one of the first like great JFK conspiracy theorists.
Maybe. Okay, my talking point all has to do with the cupboard. So my first section here is the wish, the key, and the cupboard. This is my take on the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Okay.
I want to get down to like, how does this work? Why does this work? So I'm going to start out with the why. In the beginning, Omri does make a wish on his birthday cake, and they do make a point of like, what'd you wish for? And then they say, you can't say your wish or it won't come true. Put a pin in that. Maybe he wished for some miracle to happen or something. The key here. So there's some discrepancies here with the origin of the key, because Jane, the mom, says, your grandma gave me that key. And then she says, I collect keys. But then later on, she also says that her mom was dying and had nothing to leave her with. I'm like, nothing? Like no money? You have a nice house, obviously.
Not even keys.
The mom says, I picked that key up and I wanted it more than anything in the whole wide world. And I was like, okay, that's kind of atypical there. That's a little weird, right?
Weird. A little obsessive with the keys.
So she says the grandma gave it to her, but then at the same time, she says, I picked it up and I wanted it more than anything. Like she just found it. Like she had, because she says she had nothing for the mom. So the mom just grabbed whatever she could, almost like a sentimental thing. Like, this is all I can have of my mom. Then I'll take it. I'll take this key. So I'm thinking, man, did the grandma know that this key was cursed? That's why she claimed, like, I have nothing to pass on to my daughter, because she didn't want her to have the key. She wanted to bring her secrets of her witch key to her grave. But then in turn, her mom knew about it and then waited until she died and then stole the key. Mom is shady. Lastly, the fucking cupboard. Gillen found this cupboard from where? Don't know. Just a lot of mysterious origins for the big prop of this movie, the big catalyst of this movie. Not a lot explained from their origins. But could this cupboard also perhaps have belonged to the grandma? And maybe the cursed cupboard found its way to the cursed key via Gillen. Gillen maybe had like a Jumanji moment, when the Jumanji box is like doing its beating drums and it's like calling to its next victim. Maybe the cupboard's the same phenomenon. The cupboard had to make its way back to the key, and the grandma was trying to hide this.
Interesting. Yeah, it is weird, because like the birthday wish one is weird to me, because like
never brought up.
But it would make more sense if, like, I don't know, you wrote the parents a little different, where like maybe he has an unhappy home life, so he wanted a friend, and so that made the Indian come to life. But like his parents love him, like his life's fine. Like what would you have wished for a magical cupboard to bring toys to life?
Yeah, it's very specific, and the wish is way before the cupboard is revealed and the key
or the Indian,
and also that. So I think maybe the wish could have been generic, like I want a miracle to happen. I want something cool to happen. I don't know. But that is in the movie, and it's just kind of like a throwaway line.
Yeah.
But it's just odd that they put it in and they don't reveal what he wished for.
Wish I knew.
Okay, so how does this fucking cupboard work? This is the big question that we've been asking all plot talk. So my questions are, does this cupboard exclusively work on plastic only? And then so when toy people come alive, are they real people who actually existed in history? Are they being physically pulled from their timeline? Do they vanish from where they were and now all of a sudden they are in the cupboard? And if so, does this mean that Darth Vader is real and RoboCop and Star Trek aliens?
That's a great point.
So are we getting like multiversal here? Are we like pulling from different timelines and realities? And what's the deal? Or is this some sort of consciousness displacement within a phony body? Like in X-Men Days of Future Past, they time travel.
Yeah.
With what's her face sending Wolverine back in time. So his physical body is still in this future time, but they send his consciousness back in time so he can control his body back in time. It's like really crazy stuff.
But then what's happening with their bodies in their real timeline? Do they just like pass out, go unconscious?
Exactly. I don't know. But then the only issue with this is that their bodies are not in this reality because they never existed. Like in Days of Future Past, like Wolverine lived all these moments and he got sent back to them. This one, they're being jumped into the future. So maybe it's a consciousness displacement. They're from another reality, and then they just kind of see themselves as flesh and blood in this plastic toy. And if so, at what point in a galaxy far, far away universe was Darth Vader pulled from? Was he like about to get the Death Star plans from Princess Leia on that ship right before A New Hope at the end of Rogue One? Was he pulled out from that? Is that why he couldn't get to her in time? What's going on, Cupboard?
It's a great question. Yeah, my theory for it is that they actually weren't pulled from a point in time. Like they just think that. Like they're just created from. They are plastic, created from plastic, and he's just like programmed through this magical cupboard to think that he's in the middle of his real life when he's not.
Yes, they just completely fabricate their own identity within this plastic toy.
Yeah,
and then if so, how the hell does that work? Is the plastic toy sentient enough to know what its description says on its product box?
I think it's just part of the cupboard magic. It gives it a backstory and brings it to life. It would be wild. You could test this theory. If you're Omri, you commission someone to make a plastic figurine of yourself and you place it into the cupboard. And then you see...
Might be like a Doodle Bob situation then.
Dude, you'd get so inceptioned into it. When you turn them back to plastic, are they just like in a Pokeball situation? We just kind of like trap their soul and they're just like stuck somewhere. Like, are they like floating around in some purgatory until being called back from the cupboard?
Because Little Bear like gets sent back on accident and that first night. So is he continuing on and was like, oh, that was weird? Or is it just like that never happened in his mind?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like Boone brought up, are they sent back to the last thing they remember or do they jump ahead? And I'm more inclined for the former.
Mm-hmm.
It just all happens like within a microsecond and their consciousness is just like displaced into a completely different time. And then they just like jump back into it and they don't remember anything. I think that's the cupboard witchcraft if they're real people.
My last question about this is does this work in reverse?
What do you mean?
So if you took your brother's rat and put it into the cupboard and locked it in, would you turn it into plastic?
Oh shit. You go into the plastic shadow realm.
Yeah, dude.
That'd be fucked up.
Because if that's true, then our theory is correct that it just creates you out of nothing.
It's just a wormhole, and it's
because that rat doesn't exist anywhere else, right?
Oh my god! Maybe there's like a whole plastic universe somewhere.
Could be,
or there's just another universe that you can jump into, and then you transform your soul, not body, via a magic cupboard.
What if it's like the Matrix? You're getting pulled out of like
just a simulation,
subconscious. Yeah. Oh, dude. What a fucked up cupboard.
Conspiracy's gonna go crazy at the end of the year with this one, I tell you.
And then my last question is, we brought it up, but like the death thing.
Yeah.
So like,
if you die in the game, do you die for real?
So if that chieftain died and you put him in the cupboard, locked him up, sent him back, would he just like automatically just drop dead if he does have his own reality? Also, do they turn back into figurines in the same pose that you lock them in, or do they return to the pose of the toy?
Yeah, we technically don't see him pose when he locks them that first time.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know that he'll turn back into plastic. So I don't know. I mean, Tommy does it, but Tommy purposely like turns around, puts his hands at his side, and gets into his quote unquote toy position.
And what about taking the axe? When you send him back, does his axe just disappear?
That's what I'm saying. Like, is he walking somewhere with an axe and then he doesn't remember what happened and all of a sudden his axe is missing? We want to know how this fucking cupboard works, dude. It is a problem. All right. My next talking point here is the visual effects. Just want to say ILM is cooking with composites.
Great.
Incredible. I was watching this YouTube video about visual effects professionals react to older movies, and they were blown away by this one. They were really impressed. Here's something from vfxblog.com titled Miniaturization Secrets. Eric Brevik on The Indian in the Cupboard. So Eric Brevik was the visual effects supervisor and second unit director of this movie. He's quote to say, my VFX director of photography is a fellow named Chuck Schumann. His experience in DPing was understanding how to match the lighting between a small set and an oversized set. Now, I said compositing shots. This is basically you're shooting someone on a blue screen set, and then you digitally insert them into a separate live photography shot. They would actually, match the size to scale up. When Omri's in his bed, the light is a certain size to him, but for Little Bear, the light is massive. So they would actually size match the lighting and help sell the effect.
The lighting's what sold it for me the first time I saw Little Bear, and I saw the way the shadow was cast.
Yeah.
From his, from him onto, I was like, okay, hold on. Like, this isn't cheesy at all. This looks super real.
That YouTube clip I saw of VFX editors reacting to the scene, they actually watched the scene when Little Bear walked out of the cupboard and hopped onto Omri's hand. And they were like, oh my God. They were like realizing all this stuff like I would never pick up on. But they are pointing out like, where is the line between shot 1 and shot 2? Where's the line? Because is he in an oversized cupboard set and he steps out of it? But how does he step onto the hand? Oh, they hid his contact points with Omri's thumb. And then it's a moving shot. Like in this shot, when he hops on the hand, they were saying, oh, the camera's 1 foot away from his hand and 6 inches above it. So now on the other set, the soundstage, this now equals out to 24 feet back and 12 feet above Lightfoot's person.
That's so cool.
And they would coordinate the camera move using a crane arm in both settings. So if the camera moved through the shot and it's now 6 inches away from House Gardino and 1 inch above his head, this would now translate to 12 feet away from Lightfoot and 6 feet above him. So then Eric Brevig continues. He said, we would basically plot out the real world and what we were doing in terms of matching that camera. And then at one point, when the camera pans by the toy box and it's in the foreground, and we hear Little Bear singing off screen, and we come into the mini set in the real world bedroom. When they clear the toy box, we see Little Bear sitting on top of his half-built longhouse. So to get this done, they figured out the total distance needed at that scale of the adult actor. And it was about 100-foot camera move. And Eric says, by tracking it and using a motion control system, we'd shoot the same exact move in the bedroom set. And then we were just able to lock them together precisely in photography.
A lot of math.
A lot of math, a lot of effort put into this. And if you go back to the behind the scenes, they're working on super boxy ass 90s computers doing this. It was quite impressive. You don't notice this stuff, and that's when it's the most impressive.
Big impressed. Like at no point was I like, wow, that's dated. I was like, this is...
No, it all looks really good.
This is great.
I see you have a talking point here. It looks pretty funny. Mine's also kind of funny. This is something we brought up in an earlier episode. Corny cameos, aka corneos, uncredited corn.
Mm-hmm.
So I got some corneos here for you, Nick.
Hit me.
That Royal Rumble scene in the cupboard with Darth Vader, the T-Rex, the Star Trek aliens, RoboCop. One of the Cardassians, not Kardashians, but a Cardassian, the Star Trek extraterrestrial, is played by Michael Papajohn, a.k.a. Ben Parker's carjacker from Spider-Man, a.k.a. the homeless guy from Spawn, previously featured on Just Play It.
Friend of the show.
Also, the G.I. Joe in that scene was played by a guy named Key Johnston, who was an uncredited Marine in Windtalkers, which is a movie we reviewed. So there you go.
Boom.
Those are your corneos for the Indian in the cupboard.
Love it. Yeah, my last talking point was I want a sequel to this, and I want it to be a horror film. And I want it to be from the point of view of all of the people who get their body snatched and then returned. And then the mental anguish they go through, gaining knowledge that they shouldn't have.
Directed by Jordan Peele. I'd be in on that.
Just like you think this person's crazy.
Yeah, maybe that's where schizophrenia comes from.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. See, you can go in a lot of directions with this, but like the point of view of like
you can get dark.
The real Little Bear who gets like soul snatched.
The best part about family movies for kids is that there's always a dark side.
It's like, wow, what a fun premise. You're like, it's a horrifying premise.
All right, let's get into our mini awards here. So it's a new tradition. We're going to rank all these at the end of the year. You got a best weapon for me. There's not too many options here. So I just went with Little Bear's bow and arrow. I mean, technically it was that old guy who died.
Yeah.
But that's the only accurate weapon in this movie. Because, obviously you'd want Boone's gun, but he didn't prove to be that sick with it.
It's just a revolver, right? There's nothing like special about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'd go with the bow and arrow as well.
Technically, I guess you could say the lightsaber. It was technically in this movie, but we'll say the bow and arrow.
I mean, he's a hell of a shot. Stuck Boone right in the chest.
Just missed the heart and lungs, according to Tommy the medic, though.
What about any standout pieces of shit?
Super clear answer. It looks like we came to the same conclusion. Patrick.
Dude.
I was writing this down in my notes as I was watching this. I said, Patrick is in the running for the biggest piece of shit because he defies the cupboard rule to selfishly yank another poor soul or displace consciousness. I don't know how it works. He does all this just because he wants a mini cowboy slave. And then later on, he's ready to expose these two displaced people to fellow classmates just to show off. And then he screams at Omri, and then he pulls the power move of, I'll show the teacher. So it's like, okay, you obviously don't care. What's that fable about the two parents that I think is a biblical one? There's like two parents and there's a kid and they're both claiming that the kid is theirs. And then someone's like, I'll cut the kid in half.
King Solomon.
Yeah. They're like, I'll cut the kid in half and you guys can both have a half. And then the real mom's like, oh my God, no, don't do it. Just give it to her. And the fake mom is like, yeah, cut him in half. Patrick is the fake mom. He doesn't give a fuck about these.
Patrick would cut the kids in half. Yeah.
He's King Solomon. He doesn't care. He wants Boone, but he doesn't care about him because when it's time to watch over his wounded ass body, guess who wants to go to sleep? Fucking Patrick.
Yeah, he has this god complex where he thinks he like owns them and they're his toys. It's fucking weird, man. It's sick.
Yeah, and then at the end they're like, we gotta send him back, and then Patrick's immediate gut reaction is no. It's like, have you not learned anything, kid? Are you thick in the head? Who do you got for biggest piece of shit?
Easily Patrick. For all the reasons you said, and again, just like his progression throughout the movie, like he was like fine and like you said earlier, neutral and pretty innocuous. And then when, time comes around, he's like snaps. Like he has this dark side to him where he wants to like own people. Like you're just like, and then just like
gets weird.
You're like, oh wow. Like the beginning, he gives Omri the toy and he's like, oh, it made me think of you. You're like, oh, that's sweet. He's a good kid. And then all of a sudden he just starts like putting Omri in terrible positions, not listening to him, screaming at him, just like turns into like the worst friend in the world. And you're like, okay, dude, one little sip of like something you want and you turn into like a terrible friend and a psychopath. Like, yeah. All right. How about MVP of the movie, James? Actor or character?
My MVP is going to Lightfoot, the actor, and Little Bear, the character, simultaneously. I really enjoyed Lightfoot's performance, and I thought he brought like nice, knowledgeable stuff. I mean, it's the writing too, but it was just like kind of breaking the stereotypes to the audience. He was cool. I like this guy. I like Little Bear's character. For me, carried the movie because House Gardino's dopey ass face did not.
Fair.
How about you? You got an MVP?
I do. It's Tommy the medic. He came in twice and
very useful.
Just kept our characters alive, and he was pretty chill about it. He wasn't mean to anybody. He was just like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, I need your help. He's like, yep, gotcha. He like patches up Little Bear and then they toss him in the cupboard and he's like, all right, see ya. And they bring him back and he's like, oh, it's you again. You're just like, thanks, Tommy. All right, James. Now it's best scene, worst scene. I'll go first.
Man. Yeah, actually, I didn't even think about this. I got to think about it.
Yeah, worst scene for me was Patrick in the hallway. Just his shrill voice and just the acting. Just I was just so like angry. I wanted to like throw my remote through my TV. Like just viscerally mad.
I'll say the worst scene was the ending. Just that 45 seconds on House Gardino's face when I think it was supposed to be a very impactful and powerful and sentimental moment. But instead, I'm staring at this funny kid's face for 45 seconds as he mouth breathes into the camera. And the camera gets like really into this actor's face a lot. And then we're also learning about how JFK was assassinated. I was like, this is a weird ending. I don't like this scene. Best scene, however, for me, was when the climax, when Boone and Little Bear and Patrick and Omri are watching the movie. We're seeing all this crazy real stuff come to life and PTSD snapping in, Boone's hooting and hollering. They were broing out before earlier in the day, and then they both just kind of get like snapped into their respective realities of like fight or flight. And then Little Bear shoots Boone and shit got real. And it was like, oh shit, like are we gonna have another dead little person in this movie? Also in the scene, super impressive camera move with the miniature of Boone on Patrick's knee, because it starts out with looking at the two kids and then it swoops in and pans around and looks at the TV, and Boone is in the shot the entire time. So again, they're doing that math to scale with the camera cranes. I noticed that. I thought that was really good. So I think the scene had a lot going for it as far as the miniature techniques and the story beats. It was very engaging. I liked it.
Yeah. I really liked the fanny pack scene when they're broing out in the fanny pack.
Yep.
Because one thing I thought was missing a little bit from the movie personally, but like watching these miniature people like operate in the world. Like we do see Little Bear go out in the backyard and kind of like hunt through the grass for that deer. And we did see Boone like get put in the drawer next to a baseball. But I kind of like the Toy Story thing where they're kind of, climbing up on furniture and being a little person in a big world. So like being in a backpack or a fanny pack was kind of interesting, getting carried around. And then obviously they have their bonding moment. You find out, yet Little Bear's depth with his wife having smallpox and that. So I was like, yeah, I like that scene. That scene made me feel good.
That was going to be my next pick.
All right, James.
Yeah, let's wrap up talking points with our sarcastic selling points.
I said a miniature Cowboys versus Indians movies through the eyes of an ugly child.
I'll say The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, except it's the Indian, the cowboy, and the cupboard.
Perfect.
Baby.
Final review. Fight.
Okay, Nick. Let's see what the other guys are saying about 1995's The Indian in the Cupboard. Starting out with Rotten Tomatoes, the critics, 70% of the critics thought this was pretty decent. Gave this a 3.5 out of 5. That's a 70% for 70%.
That's pretty darn good, actually. That's pretty darn good for the critics. Unfortunately, the people did not feel the same. 41%.
What the hell, people? This is a people pleaser movie. Are you kidding me?
More so than critics, I would think.
Yeah, I was okay. Different story for the Metacritic average review. Critics are giving it a 58, translates to a 5.8 on the popcorn scale. Not stellar.
No. But in the reverse of Rotten Tomatoes, the people give this a 7.4.
And now for our arrow shooting, cowboy hootin', fanny pack goofing, fucked up cupboard score from IMDb, a 6.0. Holy hootin',
always count on IMDb.
Scootin'. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Always count on IMDb to be right in the middle there.
Right in the goddamn middle. Okay, Nick, it is your turn to slap this movie with a laughable log line, some popcorn points, and just give me your overall final thoughts on this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So my log line is, after a young, funny-looking boy gets a terrible birthday present, he finds out that he can magically play God when he snatches the souls of real people into his toys. I gave this a 6.0.
Just like IMDb.
Yeah, this is the exact same score that I gave Free Willy, and I feel very similar about it. I mean, it's a fun, enjoyable movie. It's well executed. Just the technical aspects of it is great. There's still a lot of convenient things that happen in the movie that move it along. There's no massive paradigm shift in characters. They all kind of still end up, minus Omri's a little better, but that's just because he realizes he can't play God, which is like, yeah, we knew that. And there's just a lot of unexplained mysteries in the movie that still just kind of confuse me a little bit. The cupboard, the key, the family dynamic. But again, a 6 for me is like a very fun movie, rewatchable. I'll show my kids this movie in the future. As a kids movie, you step out and you kind of have a ceiling in my mind. This is just a personal thought. You have a ceiling, and like the ceiling's like a 6.5 for a kids movie because you just can't really get that heavy with characters for kids. And so like you executed, I think execution wise, it was just top tier for what they were doing, minus Omri and whatever was going on there. But it's a 6, and it's like a clean 6 for me. And one of the reasons I hate falling victim to this, because I never want to do this. One of the reasons I kept it a 6 is because it was the exact same as Free Willy, and it gave me the exact same. It gave me the exact same feelings as Free Willy. I'm like, wow, this was fun. It's engaging. It's good for kids. It's good for the audience, and it was executed well.
I love it. Okay, my laughable log line is, A dopey-faced kid is gifted with a ghetto cupboard off the street that turns plastic objects into their real-life counterparts because he either wished that on his birthday or it's his grandma's witchcraft key. Not sure, they don't explain it. This is 7.4 popcorn points. I was kind of torn on this, and again, I didn't want to pigeon my hole. Or I didn't want to pigeon my hole. Heyo, I'm out the cupboard, baby. I didn't want to pigeonhole myself. God damn it. Based on previous scores that I've given movies. So I actually did have strong recollection feelings about watching Free Willy and watching this movie. Those two movies were both 90s nostalgic childhood watches. Things I vividly remember. I remember loving the movie when I was a kid. I think I kind of buffed up Free Willy a lot.
Yeah, you gave it an 8.
Yeah, that was a lot. But to be fair, I did like the overall, not story that they told in Free Willy, but message, which was just like, hey, don't fucking capture whales, especially my favorite animal, the orca.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I think it was just like really moving, and it was impressive with like the whale work and stuff, and the thing beyond it of like trying to actually get that whale that was in the movie free in real life. I think it just kind of sparked a whole movement. Again, that should have no effect on the movie itself, but yeah, definitely kind of buffed up Free Willy there. So I'm not going to do that here with this one. I was kind of floating around the 6.9 a little bit because like right after I immediately watched it, I was like, I don't quite understand the story. I don't know what they're trying to tell me here. I was ready to give it that 6.9. Like you're not good, but you're good enough.
Yeah.
So I will say this movie does scratch that nostalgic 90s movie itch. Again, the VFX, shout out to ILM, the whole VFX crew. They use a lot of basic techniques to really sell the effect, like we were talking about with lighting. There's a lot of shallow depth of field, and they mix it in with shifts in focus between the two units of photography. So they're using a lot of simplistic effects to sell that there's these two completely different human scales on screen at the same time. But then I learned about the crazy compositing that they're doing with digital effects. And they flex a lot of this impressive shots, like when Boone's on the knee of Patrick and in the longhouse sweeping crane shot. You don't think about that as a kid. And I can't say how much, like, I can't say enough how impressive this is. And when it's like so seamless and believable, sometimes it goes unappreciated. So I just want to like shout that out, because when it's horrendous, it's super noticeable. And we have dinked movies points for that in the past. Mm-hmm. So I got to give some points when the VFX team nails it, especially with this being like 30 years ago. Really cutting edge stuff. Really can't say enough about VFX. I did appreciate the stereotypes, how they brought these to light and also kind of made light of them. They kind of joked around with them of past prejudices. The Steve Coogan How part, like I said, hilarious. Little Bear big brings it back and uses that to get past the teacher, discovering them as real people. Tommy calls Little Bear an engine. Omri, is being cooked for wanting to make them breakfast, and he's called a woman. So there's a lot of like just historical past, like outdated slurs and stereotypes being thrown out, and it's really just bringing it all into an open playing field light of like, yeah, this is kind of dumb and we shouldn't say this. So I did appreciate that. It was kind of like a gateway into introducing kids to and mainstream audiences to like the intricate and not so simple culture of the indigenous peoples of this land. So those were the two really strong points of this movie: the social commentary and the VFX, like super high points for me. The characters, however, the story, a little bit different there. So the characters, Omri learns lessons from Little Bear and he shows progression through certain situations. But Little Bear is like almost a little bit bipolar and indecisive, because I couldn't tell if he wanted to go back home or if he wanted to stay, because he was like mad at Omri for the death scene. He was like, if you can't deal with this, then like you should just shove it and go away. And then it's just like, I know they have a bond, but it's not smooth progression. We're really just kind of seeing like these bits of lessons being taught. It's kind of like Omri's going to Little Bear school, and he shows up, and in today's class, this old man's going to die in front of your face, and you got to react correctly. If you don't, I'm going to storm off angry.
Learn your lesson.
Yeah, you're going to learn today. So I don't know if he's like actually bipolar, or maybe it's like being yanked from his reality is messing with his brain. I don't know. I don't know how the fucking cupboard works, like we said. Also, Patrick sucks. Story. Story is a little unorganized. I'm not sure if the lesson was like, hey, treat everyone like a true human. Don't treat them like objects. You should give empathy. Because it was also kind of combined with a coming of age story, because Omri is like Okwe's pseudo nephew almost. And it's like he's on this path to lead Omri into adulthood instead of his nephew from his reality he was displaced from. So, you know, I could weave pieces of story together if I needed to, but I didn't feel like they were really there, not enough to really connect them seamlessly, or to convey that there was just one solid story. It just kind of seemed like two half-assed sides of this fucked up cupboard coin.
Yeah, I that's a great breakdown of it, and I'm in agreement with you. I'm not sure how many lessons learned there were, because every time I thought somebody learned a lesson, they didn't learn the lesson. Omri's, wow, I can't, control you guys. You guys have to go back home. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and like steal this Indian woman's soul and make her your wife. It's like, dude, did you not just hear what we were talking? Did you not?
So like the story, and like, again, the story and characters are like so key to me for a good movie. But like, if you make it up with just like pure filmmaking quality, like they did in this movie, and I have a good time and I get a couple laughs, you'll get some points from me. So I'm not going to buff it up to Free Willy level, but apparently this is the same as Blade for me. So there's that.
Yeah. Didn't quite pigeon your hole.
Okay. All right. That's the Indian in the cupboard. Nick, you got anything else for this movie, or we kind of covered it all?
I think we covered it all. It's time to put this episode in the cupboard and lock the key.
Oh God, it's going to turn into plastic. Oh God.
Send it back home. All
right. Well, with that, we're heading gone. Thank you guys so much for listening. Please follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Just Play It Podcast. Please follow us on X at Just Play It Pod. And tune in next week. We are going to be continuing this Native American theme with a movie that will probably have a lot more groundedness to it and even more authentic Native American stories to tell. And I can't wait.
Neither can I, buddy.
You got anything? Like the title's illiterate, or just like
oh, I thought you meant for this podcast. You're talking about
no. A hint for next week's movie.
Well, yeah. I think if you look hard enough, you could probably see this sign coming from a few miles away.
Okay, if you can't tell we're smoking on that, then I can't really help you. All right, my guy. So we'll see you there. Thank you so much for listening, and remember, if you're gifted a fucked up ghetto cupboard that your older brother gifted you for your birthday, do not accept it. And if you do, you should kick the shit out of his rat ball down the stairs and fucking show him who's the goddamn alpha dog of this house, all right?
Show him who's boss.
That's it. That's it, man. I'm out the cupboard, baby.
Wow, that's a nice cupboard.